We are at the beginning of another new section in Ezekiel. Chapters 1 to 24 were about Jerusalem and how it was doomed to destruction. Chapters 25 to 32 were oracles of judgment against the nations. Now, from chapters 33 to 39, we have another section of oracles which are about restoration. The most important part of chapter 33 is the moment when the exile community is brought the news of Jerusalem's fall. Most of the oracles in the previous section were based on this fact, but, as we saw, they have not been arranged chronologically, either within the book as a whole or even amongst themselves. Chapter 33 picks up the timeline from chapter 24, though now the fall has happened. Ezekiel's ministry changes. The Lord opens his mouth. The sign he has been enacting, that of silence until given to speak a word from God, is now finished with. But judgment is not finished. Ezekiel is established as a sentinel for Israel, and the same warnings are given as we read in chapter 3. He has a responsibility to warn people when God would have them warned, and the people in turn have a responsibility to respond and change their ways. They are not able to blame their fathers, rely on their past, or even despair because of their past. Those who repent and do right will live. Those who abandon their righteous ways for evil ones will die, and their righteous deeds will not count for them. From verse 23, there is an oracle given for the survivors of the disaster in Judah. They see an opportunity to take the land now that it is laid waste. But the message from Ezekiel is this: you continue to defile yourselves and commit abominations. It is for such things as these that I determine to destroy the land and leave it barren and desolate. Those who remain, who are guilty of all the same things, will add their own bones to the thickening dust. The familiar options of death are given: the sword for those in the waste places, wild animals for those in the fields, plague for those in the strongholds or caves. As there is no siege, the fourth option of famine is absent from the grisly list. The chapter ends on a curious but also appropriate note. The curious thing is that people seem to like Ezekiel and enjoy hearing him speak his oracles, like a minstrel. But they are only there for the nice sounds. They will not actually obey him. Nevertheless, the Lord will prove that Ezekiel was a prophet and no mere folk singer. Judgment continues in chapter 34, but it gradually gives way to hope. The Lord begins by criticizing the leaders of Israel, presumably those in exile with Ezekiel, saying that as shepherds of his people, they had a responsibility to care for them in various ways, all modelled on the way a good shepherd would look after his flock. Not only have they not done the things that they should, they have fed themselves on the sheep. They have taken the best for themselves, the fat and the wool. They use their leadership and prominence to better themselves, not to serve the Lord by caring for his flock. The first order of business, then, is to rescue the sheep. The Lord will demand them back from the bad shepherds, and then he will search for those who have been scattered. He will bring them back together and bring them to a good land with rich pasture. He will seek them, heal them, feed them, and give them security. The bulk of this part of the oracle is devoted to what the Lord will do for the sheep when he takes back control. This time, there is no lingering over retribution. He simply says in verse 16 that he will destroy the fat and the strong. The imagery of the shepherd is not the pleasant, gentle image we have of it today. It was normal to think of God as shepherd of his people as much as he was the king, or to think of the king as the shepherd. It was his role to protect his people, but also to judge their cases, to make sure there was fairness and proper order. It was not simply a nice pastoral image of grass and grazing, although such niceness is drawn on when talking about future healing. Judgment turns to the flock itself, but this time it's in the sense of sorting out things rather than punishment. Yahweh was, of course, the original and rightful shepherd, as he was king of Israel. But the people had asked Samuel for another king, and therefore another shepherd, or long series of shepherds. These have utterly failed, and the sheep are either dead or lost. Yahweh resumes his role and restores what is left of his flock. Verses 23 and 24 promise a new shepherd given by God himself, who will be my servant David. The Lord will be their God, and the shepherd David will not be their king, but their prince or ruler. Furthermore, God will make a covenant of peace with these sheep so that they will live securely. They will no longer be harmed by people or by animals, and the land will produce plentifully for them. No one will make them afraid, and the nations will know that the Lord their God is with them.